Hey folks, welcome back. It's good to see you again. It's been a minute. And today I want to talk about the fact that language is a weapon. We're here to talk about the weaponization of language. You know, as someone who did study psycholinguistics, who is sort of an amateur linguist, as someone who works in mass communications, I understand language. I understand a lot about its construction. I studied Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky talked about language as an organ of the mind. Language. I understand the importance of language. That's why I do this. That's why I sit here and talk. And language has definitely been weaponized against us. And I'm not sure the public at large is sort of as aware as they should be about the extent to which that language has sort of been weaponized against us. And, this occurred to me. Well, this occurs to me all the time. I mean, I see it everywhere I go, and it just bugs the shit out of me. I mean, there's so much language being used to just make people stupid. Like when I was at the Harris Teeter the other night, there were all these pumpkins on display, and there was a sign that said carving pumpkins. Like, this pumpkin is for carving. Like, you can't use it for anything else. And I was thinking to myself, well, what if I want to cut it up and use it for a pie? You know what I mean? And that's when they're just sort of trying to give us more instructions to follow, right? They're trying to just sort of dumb us down and just make us a little more stupid and sort of self-hating, and they're trying to strip our own confidence and our ability to sort of make decisions based on language. Okay? So language is a weapon. And I sort of reached my boiling point the other day when I was at Whole Foods, and I realized that everyone at Whole Foods, which is a health food store, was wearing a mask. Like, that's got to be the most insane thing I've ever seen. Like walking into a health food store and where literally everyone was wearing a mask but me. How is this not 100% insanity? We know masks don't work. We know they're not a real medical solution. We know they're a symbol. If you're standing in a health food store wearing the equivalent of a dirty pair of underwear on your face, what are you symbolizing? So there I am walking maskless through the aisles of Whole Foods on October 18th of 2021, which was yesterday. And I'm the only one there not wearing a mask. And I'm in a health food store. And I'm, as far as I can tell, the only person who actually gives a crap about their health. Like, so what are all these other people doing there? Why are you wearing a mask in a health food store? Why are you even there at all? Because clearly you're not interested in health, right? So you must be there for a reason. And it occurred to me, these people are here virtue signaling. They're here to signal their virtue more than be an ambassador for health. But what does wearing a mask in a health food store signal? What virtue am I being made aware of by this? If we think about the symbology of masks, masks are worn to hide identities. Masks are worn so that we are not seen, and this makes me think, why are so many people so adamant and fervent about their masks? You look on YouTube and Prager's doing interviews with people and asking them point blank, why are you still wearing a mask? And a lot of the people are like, I don't know, it's just sort of become part of my identity. I'm not sure, because everyone else sort of is. And it's like they're projecting their shame as a virtue, right? Like if I'm still wearing a mask, I'm projecting the fact that it's virtuous to be ashamed of who I am. Like being ashamed of oneself is a virtue in our society today. And I think this is true for a lot of people because a lot of people have actually been made to believe that being ashamed of who they are is a virtue. And as sick as this sounds, I can completely understand why. And the reason why is because of language. In order to get out of the matrix, we need to have self-respect. Getting out of the matrix requires self-respect. And when we see people walking around who are still wearing a mask, we can assume that in some area of their life, they're ashamed of who they are. And in a broader terms, in a broader sense, we can assume that they don't have self-respect. And being someone with no self-respect has actually become the playbook of the mainstream agenda. If you have no self-respect or respect for humanity, you've established yourself as acceptable to the mob. And the great thing to the mob, for the mob, about growing a society that has no respect for itself is that inherent in the model is a society that has no respect for each other. And if we don't respect each other's humanity, it's a lot easier to desecrate that humanity when and if we're ever asked to do so. And language is the weapon that's being used to create self-censoring beings with little or no self-respect. And according to the Whorfian hypothesis, our perception of reality is determined by our thought processes, which are influenced by the language we use. In this way, language shapes our reality and tells us how to think about and respond to that reality. So present-day self-hatred is the fruit of a program of language weaponization that started with political correctness. The term political correctness first appeared in Marxist and Leninist doctrine after the Russian Revolution in 1917. And the reason why the term political correctness was introduced was to demonstrate an individual's adherence to the policies and principles of communism, of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. Okay? Political correctness is a Marxist ideology. It is a communist ideology. If you were politically correct, then that basically meant that you were towing the party line. You were towing the Communist Party line. So, if we take political correctness and we apply it to the policies and principles shaping the party line in America, you're not allowed to say in public that there's a difference between men and women. You know, if you're towing the party line in America today, a peaceful demonstration of conservatives is a riot, right? On the other hand, if you're a liberal, a riot is social justice and a peaceful demonstration. If you're towing the party line in America today, you know, separating children in school based on their race is the opposite of racism, because we're actually protecting those children from white privilege. Because non-white children are too incompetent, and they will ultimately be victimized by their superior white brethren. Okay, this is the opposite of racism in America today. You know, if you're towing the party line in America today, it's my body, my choice. If I want to terminate someone else's life, it's my body and my choice. But it's not my body, my choice if it's my body I want to protect with my choice. If you're towing the party line in America today, you're not allowed to speak out about the fact that Anthony Fauci's been lying to us about what's going on with this very important information that he's been delivering. You know, these are very serious matters, and we're not allowed to mention the fact that we caught Fauci lying. You know, we read his emails to his partners about their involvement in the cover-up, in the creation and cover-up of the virus. And we can't mention the fact that we know that Fauci owns half the patent to the Moderna vaccine, which causes a pretty significant conflict of interest. We can't say that. If you're being a good little communist American today, then believing in God demonstrates your ignorance, and belief in science demonstrates your intelligence. If you're being a good communist American today and you believe in the American family, you're obviously a redneck. And if you believe in polyamory and sexual immorality, then you're self-empowered. If you're being a good little American today and you notice someone who sees smoke and says there could be fire, you know, that person is definitely a conspiracy theorist. On the other hand, if you ignore the smoke and let the fire burn and then let the building burn down, you know, you're the coolest person in the room, and you obviously know something that the rest of us don't know. And this perversion of reality has come through the manipulation of our language, right? Manipulate the language, you manipulate the thoughts and behaviors, you manipulate the character of the person. And because we live in the inverted operating system of the matrix, political correctness, which was introduced as a means to sort of curtail bias, has become the source of all bias. If you're a liberal journalist and you begin an article with something like, longtime conspiracy theorist and alleged QAnon founder runs for governor, you are a source of the bias. If you're the president of the United States and you say, you ain't black if you don't vote for me, you have become the source of the bias. If you're a mainstream media reporter and you advocate for half the population being put into internment camps because they don't want to get an experimental injection, you have become the source of the bias. And yet, it's as if the people who have become the source of the bias, who are trying to convince us that the reason they're doing all this is to curtail bias, they're trying to convince us. They're trying to gaslight us into believing that it's us. That those of us who are mindful and vigilant about being truthful, with our words, they're trying to convince us that we're the source of the bias. And this is obviously, a tool that's being used to undermine critical thinking, right? Individuality and human sovereignty. So the Bible has lots of language surrounding language, okay? The Bible says that what goes into someone's mouth does not defile them, but what comes out of their mouth is what defiles them. The Bible is also very outspoken about being quiet, right? Keeping our mouth shut is a virtue that's sort of long since been forgotten in this country. Because we're taught to be individuals and to sort of have an individual voice and to sort of speak up, the whole notion of being silent and listening has sort of gone to the winds. This virtue of being silent is indicative of those of a Christian faith. And it has really sort of come down to people who have a Christian faith or a spiritual faith or belief in God or the 10 Commandments or right and wrong or good over evil. They have sort of been the opposition to this mainstream narrative. And so, people who know research, people who understand metrics, can say, well, basically, Christians aren't buying this narrative. And, well, those Christians tend to keep quiet for a while. It's in the literature they read. So we can do ourselves a favor by being really outspoken about all this bullshit. And they've been using that virtue of Christianity, against us. So for a Christian, those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. For a Christian, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent, and discerning if they hold their tongues. And so it's time to begin understanding the power of language to shape our reality. Up until now, I've said that language is a weapon that's being used against us. And, that is true. However, language is a weapon, and it can be used by the light for the light. The light can use language for good. And it's time to start doing that. So if someone says you don't care about society because you're not wearing a mask, you might say, actually, I love humanity. That's why I like breathing fresh air. I don't wear a mask as a symbol of my freedom. I'm virtue signaling to you that I'm free. And this is the way God wanted it. If someone says, you're irresponsible because you haven't received this experimental injection, well, experimental injection for what? Has the virus been isolated? Is there even an accurate test to detect this virus that hasn't been isolated? Now that we know the PCR test has failed its full review and its emergency use authorization has been revoked in a Class 1 recall, and that all measurements based on the test should be ceased immediately, we can say, well, what do you test this virus that hasn't even been isolated with? That's why I'm not getting this experimental injection. What I'm trying to say is we can stick up for ourselves. If they're going to use language to cut us down, we can use language to build the world back up. We have to acknowledge the fact that we're at war with a dark force that is hell-bent on convincing us that we're evil, convincing us that we're incompetent and that we should hate ourselves. And in the process, we should also have no self-respect. And when we do this, they will then accept us. That's what they're trying to convince us of, okay? That's what this war is all about, and we need to know that the war is for our consciousness, and we need to start protecting our consciousness through our use of language and in rejection to others' use of language against us. We cannot allow what others say to impact us. And furthermore, if we have to, sometimes we need to reverse the impact that others' languages had through our language of our own. As conscious, compassionate human beings, it's time to wield language as it's being wielded against us. We, of course, are going to wield our language for truth, not falsehood, but we need to pick up the language sword and start swinging it. We need to start being more outspoken when language is being used against us. Like if someone is trying to hurt your kid with a lie, right? If in some classroom or something like that, you have to call that liar a liar. You have to shield your child from their words with your words, and then you have to turn around and use your words as a sword against the lie. If you have a boss that's being duplicitous and using duplicitous language to coerce you into being poked against your will, you need to call them duplicitous. If a president's actions don't match that president's words, it's time to call that president a hypocrite, and, on and on. The point is, we now have been made aware that language is being used against us, and it's time to reverse this and bring the fight to those who are seeking to disempower us through their evil use of language with empowering language of our own. So that's all I've got for now. Thanks for sticking around, and we'll see you next time.